Welcome to the Six Hats podcast, where I, Dr. Shami, a lifestyle and nutritional medicine family doctor, will talk about how women strive to find balance each day by juggling their six roles, being a woman, mother, daughter, partner, business owner, and professional. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Six Hats podcast, and I'm really excited about the conversation I'm going to have today. I'm joined with Conrad Tracy, founder of Addiction Coaching Australia. Now, Conrad has got such an inspiring journey and story to tell, and this is what we're going to dive into today. So just a bit about Conrad. He actually battled crippling addiction to ice and cocaine for 10 years. Now, his experience was shocking. It was substandard, outdated, and he felt shortchanged and frustrated. And he always thought there was a better way for high-performing people to break the cycle of addiction and fast-track their return to optimal health, happiness, and potential. So this story is going to give so much hope and also direction. So he set about combining his lived experience, psychology degree, and 15 years of corporate and set up his private and sustainable solution. Now, he's helped hundreds of people from all over the globe regain their confidence and control, and more importantly, rebuild their relationships with themselves and others. So welcome, Conrad.
Dr. Shami, thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited for this conversation all week. You know, there's things you see in your calendar and I'm like, I can't wait to do that one.
Awesome. Me too.
Really
Because I love stories and my listeners absolutely adore them, and they feel they can almost, relate, and they feel inspired and they take action. So this is so awesome. So I'm actually going to start with your story. So looking back, what would you say the key moments were in your life that led you down the path of ice and cocaine addiction?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it and I've done a lot of work on it. And there's answers to that questions that were not apparent to me until later in my life. So before I discovered my childhood trauma, which was severe, and I did that through a process of EMDR and long-term kind of psychological well-being and care, I would say it was a number of things. Like when I came to Australia from Hong Kong. Okay. We moved from Hong Kong into the eastern suburbs of Melbourne into a place called Ringwood. If anyone knows it, it's a beautiful place in the kind of late 80s, early 90s. It was suburban, right? Now, I was this little kid from Hong Kong. I don't think, there was anybody else that was kind of Asian or, culturally different in the street. I found it a little bit challenging to fit in. That ran through my formative years and my teenage years. And, I did find social groups, but I tended to gravitate towards ones that were things that weren't kind of going as they should. And I fell in with the wrong crowd through high school, but I was also very smart and very good at things. I was lucky. I did well at sports. I excelled at school, but I was always running this little double life. And that continued through university and all of the things. And then I really hit the party scene when I came out of uni. So I kind of leveled up in life. I met new people. I moved to new areas. I came into East St Kilda and Balaclava and the city, and also lived at near Melbourne Uni when I was studying there. And I was hanging around with a lot of older people, and I got into parties, right? So I started taking party drugs, ecstasy, which led to cocaine, and then led to a little bit of methamphetamines, but I really didn't get into it until later on. None of it was congruent. None of it made sense, right? I used to think, what's going on? The trajectory's been good, but there's always been this thing that's been following me around, right? Like this shadow that I always want to interact with. I always want to engage with it. Through my life, I had aversions to a lot of things that I didn't understand, right? So I didn't like being in small spaces. I didn't like being in the dark. I didn't like things that used to like tight clothing or having things around my neck or being put in physical positions that I couldn't get out of. And it started to make sense to me after all of my education that something might have occurred to me when I was a kid, right? And like I said, I went on this deep journey of EMDR and therapy, and slowly started to go into this part of my brain where I had stored this kind of horrific childhood trauma, right? And I won't spend too much time talking about it, but it wasn't great. And I was very, very young. It happened at that period when I moved to Australia, about 5 or 6. And that's when everything changed, right? I went from a happy, vibrant beautiful young boy to a sheltered, angry, scared individual. You know, my physical appearance changed. I put on a lot of weight. My relationships with men my entire life were challenging. I always fell into competition with them, or it was either competition or, what's the word I'm looking for? Confrontation. So that was challenging. And I think that had a lot to do with it, right? So I wasn't good at processing emotions. I was constantly in fight. I was deeply traumatized. And what drugs allowed me to do, and this is a real, very important piece, is that they let me be myself, right? So when I started taking ecstasy and partying and I'm like, oh, I can express myself and I can let people in and I can let this mask and this barrier down. But unfortunately, that is not a sustainable way to do it, right? And I didn't learn that until later on. Yeah, I had great success. You know, I opened a number of businesses. I was entrepreneurial, co-working, property, internet retail, but still this kind of double life. And when I bumped into methamphetamines, that's when things started to go horribly, horribly wrong. For me, it was a opportunity to work harder.
Mm.
Okay. I had multiple businesses. I had hundreds of thousands of my dollars of my money and my family's money on the line, kind of sitting in two businesses that were teetering, and I needed to be there. I needed to work 15, 16, 17, 20 hours a day to make it all work. And that was a way for me to do it. But unfortunately, it led to anxiety, stress, deep psychosis, breakdown of my mental and physical health, and a dependency that took me years and years and years to break. And I have a character, right? I have a background, I have education, I have understanding, I had support, but it still took me years. And it was so, so frustrating. So, I mean, that's long-winded, but to kind of break it down, it would be the social challenges that I faced coming to Australia, fitting in, finding peer groups. The trauma is a huge part of it. And then finding something which I thought was going to fast track my success, which absolutely did the opposite, right?
That's amazing, Conrad. I just want to say thank you for your honesty. I think
Oh,
that's
it's cool.
important to recognize that.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. And, like the final piece, which I've talked to you so deeply about, and you've helped me so much with this, is that you might have to correct me here, but my understanding is that sometimes through traumatic events, things like ADHD can occur in the brain. Is that correct, or am I off?
What they actually say is ADHD is a developmental delay, and
Yep.
it would have been occurrent before the age of 12, but people often don't know about it, and often they've
Yep.
normalized it and struggled. So they're looking at it more as a developmental issue. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and look, I can't remember exactly how it was explained to me, but that's always been something that I've struggled with.
Mm.
High motivation at the start and struggling to kind of engage with things long term. And with the methamphetamines, like all amphetamines, with ADHD, when I used to take it, it was the only place I could find calm. I wasn't one of those people that used and partied for 4 days. I was one of those people who used and was just like, oh, thank God, my brain is quiet, right?
Wow.
So I found like solitude and peace in ice, which is crazy to say out loud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, that whole story, what you've described, there's so much to unpack there. But I think what I'm hearing is that it's used to serve a purpose. And that's what I found in many of my
Yeah.
patients as well. And often, there's shame and guilt and embarrassment to even address it. But you've described it fully. It was serving a purpose where it was
Absolutely.
giving you some level of relief. And I have to say, you're not on your own at all. I'm hearing this story so often. I'm guessing that in your line of work, you're hearing that story as well. These are highly functioning people. They tried it and it served them a purpose. They were getting relief. And it's almost a drug. It is a drug that was giving them a positive effect.
Yeah. It's a very, very short cut, right? It's one of the shortest shortcuts I've ever experienced in my life. It works very well, very quickly for a very small period of time. And then the consequences are absolutely dire.
I'm going to ask like a really innocent question because I'm still understanding the whole
Totally.
drugs are doing. How addictive are they? Because obviously I know cocaine's addictive, but how addictive are these drugs? Is it a gradual thing? Do
Yep.
people become addictive quite quickly once they try it? I'd love to explore.
Yeah, I was adamant I would never touch it.
Mm.
I'm completely adamant. I used to have it around me all of the time. I used to say, no, thank you. And then I remember one day that changed, and it happened really quickly. And then it was, I know people say it's a slippery slope. It was more than that. It was like a landslide.
Wow.
So unfortunately, if you're used to feeling like a high performing person, or if you're used to having to do things in a day, when you use methamphetamines, the high is so high, but the low is so low that it is a very natural progression for you to want to stay up.
Right.
Okay. I always joke that, like, if you're going to do it, never do it 2 days in a row. And I shouldn't be opening that door for people. It's kind of a lighthearted thing to say, but it's true. It gets you very quickly. And I felt like it was a matter of 60 to 90 days, and then it's uncontrollable. So I always tell a story of me being at work. So I had 2 businesses on Chapel Street, big businesses, and a lot of responsibilities, a lot of things to take care of, a lot of people to look after. And I remember being at work, and then I remember being in Middle Park, or no, not even Middle Park, like Springvale, right? So I'd locked up my shop, I'd gone to the car, I'd got my car, I'd driven to the ATM, I'd driven all the way down Princess Highway, 45, 50 minutes in traffic, and then I found myself in Springvale. And this is where I was buying drugs at this particular time. And I had no recollection of doing it, okay? It wasn't even a choice. It was a complete autopilot. All I knew is that I needed that thing, and I was going to do anything that I had to do to get there. And that is incredibly alarming for somebody that is so in the world, okay? So that's where the shame and guilt comes in. You just look at yourself and you're like, I got to this point in my life. I'm good at this. I know how to achieve things. I know how to follow through. I know how to learn and hold on to information and get results. And I'm desperate, and I'm out of control, and I'm losing my capacity for my mental health and mind. It was really scary. So yeah, my answer is very quickly.
Wow. Before we sort of move on to your journey to give people so much hope in what you do, how common is it? Because it's a hard conversation to have with your GP, and it takes a while to develop a relationship that you might disclose it, and often people hide it right from the start. So from your experience, it can affect anyone, absolutely anyone, any level of education, any level of societal status as well. Yep. And it can affect anyone. That's the key thing.
It's incredibly widespread, and the last probably 2 to 5 years, the stigma has dropped, right? So it was prevalent in certain communities early on, and then it was probably had a pretty nasty stigma, and now it's everywhere.
Wow.
If you had an insight into the people that I've worked with in terms of age, demographic, socioeconomic status, careers, it is alarming how many people who are responsible for other people's lives are dependent on this drug, right? So people that are working shifts, people that are working emergency, people that are working in hospitals, anywhere where there is that demand on time, there's probably methamphetamines, right? So yeah, it's rampant. It's everywhere. It touches all levels. And unfortunately, at the lower socioeconomic, in the lower socioeconomic areas, it has horrible effects.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? And we can see it. We can definitely see it. And often we don't see it in the highly functioning individual. It's not as obvious.
For me, it's funny. Like I do this thing. I don't read the papers a lot, but when I do, I can pick one up and I'll flick through the first 6 or 7 pages, and I'm like, ice, wow. Ice. Yeah, like I can see the behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what caused it. And, recently we had, I'm just going to call this, like we haven't heard it yet, but, like 2 or 3 nights ago, unfortunately, there was that horrible incident in Sydney where the two guys were murdered. And I'm just going to say today that I guarantee you there was some involvement, right? It's just got it written all over it. That's the type of things that occur. So alarming, and people do things that are not of this realm, right? Without getting too esoteric.
Yeah, absolutely. So Conrad, moving on to your journey, I love to hear the point where you go, I need to do something different. What was that point?
Yeah, look, I've done a lot of thinking about this. And for me, I was on the cusp of losing my family.
Right.
And I think it's different for others, but for me, I was on the last tether, and my mother was like, we're done. right? I'm done with you. My family's done with you. There's 72 of us in Melbourne. So it's a
Oh,
big
cool.
family. Yeah. And I didn't want to lose that because I knew that as soon as I lost that anchor, I would be out to sea. And now we have an incredible relationship. I'm so connected to to my mum and to my family, to my cousins. So for me, it was loss of connection and loss of family. And also it was lack of potential. Right. So I've always known that I'm here to do something. And I've always known that whatever I do, I'm going to do it well. But I always had this thing just dragging me back, this
Right.
self-sabotage. I'd just get some success and then I'd throw a grenade under it. And then I'd get some success and I'd throw a grenade under it. And I've done so much work on that. For others, I have thought long and hard about this. And I've said it before. I think it's about external perception. Okay. So the moment that external or that exterior facade starts to crack, so, somebody looking in at your life, like your boss or your friends or your, people at work, and they start to see that maybe you're not the best parent and maybe you don't have your finances together and maybe your marriage is falling apart and maybe you're not looking very well and you're getting sick and you're not showing up and you're not reliable. Okay. As soon as that starts to crack, people start getting help.
Right.
Unfortunately, so much damage happens first behind that facade. Okay. You'll do abhorrent things to your partner. You'll do terrible things to your kid. You'll be completely irresponsible with money, right? You'll lie. And that's all okay because nobody can see it, right? But as soon as that public perception falls, that's when people start really getting very, very worried. And that's alarming, I think.
It's almost accountability. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, where I love the way you described it, someone else's perspective of you
Yeah.
and how we are really influenced by that. And that's great. I mean, something has to sort of fall in order to create change,
Mm.
which is amazing. So, Conrad, I'd love to know, why did you feel so passionate about setting up addiction coaching? What was, I wouldn't say wrong in the system, what could be done better, and why are you doing it better?
Yeah, so for me, I've always been interested in how to do things better. I've been surrounded by, I've got an incredible friendship group, entrepreneurs, people that have built things, fixed things, and
Love it. Love it.
improved things. Yeah. And I would put you in that category, absolutely. So what I went through was, can I talk about the journey?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Love to
So
know.
I went to rehab. I think we jumped on Google and went rehab Melbourne. And then I talked to somebody and he said, oh, no, you should go here, right? Someone that I trusted. And later I found out that they got a kickback for sending me to this place. So ethics is my first issue.
Mhm.
And basically where I ended up was a private home. Okay. The staff there were questionable. I don't think any of them were really trained or qualified in what they were doing. They might have been thinking about it. And I was chucked in there with a whole bunch of people. It was not curated at all. Okay. So basically they're just taking anybody that will pay their fee. And the curriculum, so what I expected was to go in, be comfortable, be cared for, be looked after, and also be to learn a lot. Right. And what I was presented with was 12-step. Okay. And I know that that has helped hundreds of thousands of people. And I think it's a beautiful program with many positive things. But I paid, I think at the time it was $10,000 a month. And now private rehabs are like 40, 50, 60,
Wow.
$70,000 a month. And that was their learning. Okay. So they basically shipped us off to 12-step meetings every day and then sent us out the door and said, your plan now for your new life is to go to 12-step meetings every day for the rest of your
Oh my
life.
God.
Right? Yeah, it was terrible. And I was desperate and I wasn't going to get it wrong. So I did exactly what they said. I was like, okay, these guys are the experts. Although I knew in the back of my mind that it wasn't right. But I was so discombobulated that I thought I'd just better stick to the program, right? Because I just like borrowed like $10,000 off my mum. I did the bit. I went to NA. I spent 3.5 years there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's 3.5 years of my life I will never get back. And I will say the first year and a half were saved my life. Okay. And the other two were a complete waste of my time, energy. And for a person like me who is interested in success and happiness and everything that this life has to offer, it's not the right environment for me. Right. I want to be around people who are inspired and motivated and are happy to burn brightly. And what I was presented there was really hard. So what made it great was that I had an amazing sponsor. And I also had the smarts to couple this program with all of the holistic therapies I could get my hands on.
That's
So
amazing.
I went down the rabbit hole. I did everything: breath work, body work, somatic healing, EMDR, psychology, although they're not holistic, but I definitely worked with people with a holistic view. And I met this man, right? And I looked at him and he was well dressed and he was handsome and, he had a beautiful wife and a beautiful home and a couple of nice cars. And not that this stuff is the most important thing. I was like, okay, if he can do that, I can do that. So I used him as my North Star. And that relationship was incredibly deep. I told him things I've never told another person. I've shared with him my innermost workings, and he helped me to make better decisions, better choices. He helped me with accountability. He helped me with structure, and he helped me to show up for myself every single day for about 2 years. And I love him for that. He was a sounding board. He was a mentor. He was a coach. He was a consultant, and he was the best, right? So I was like, I reckon I can be that for somebody.
So true.
Yeah. And that was kind of the small vision. And then what I realized is that with amazing partners and amazing technology and amazing marketing, I could reach hundreds and thousands of people and give them a place where they can come and feel safe, all people, supported, get world-class learning, not just stuff from the 1950s, access to great practitioners like yourself, and support from people who have actually gone through it and not just gotten well, but excelled. I remember the day I decided I was going to do it. It's like it sticks out so clearly to me. I was at an NA meeting in South Melbourne at a lunchtime meeting at 12:30 p.m. And it's a very colourful meeting, right? No judgment. I was there. I saw this beautiful person walk into the meeting and she was a mess. Right. She was very well dressed. She'd obviously come from maybe South Bank or from her job in the city and found this thing online and showed up there. And she sat there and she was horrified that this was the solution that everyone had told her to go to, right? AA or NA. And she, as soon as the meeting finished, she got up. People tried to come to her to help her, and she made a beeline for the door. And I never saw her again.
Yeah.
She almost ran out of there.
I was just going to say, did she run out?
She literally was like picking up momentum as she was heading out the door. And I'm like, that's got to happen every day. And there's got to be hundreds, if not thousands of people who have careers, jobs, relationships, families, responsibilities, privacy concerns, who need help, who are not prepared to go to those meetings, right? And I was like, I could help her. And I've helped so many people just like her since. So
amazing.
That was pivotal.
Absolutely amazing. I know I'm sidetracking a bit, but when you were talking, I was thinking, what could GPs do differently to encourage patients to acknowledge that they've got a problem? Like, what would you have liked to have seen in that journey? Because I'm thinking, wow, there are actually so many touch points that you had. And why did you feel so alone? And why was it your initiative? And thankfully, your family was there behind you.
Yeah.
Where's the failing in the system where there's so many touch points where we could direct people to the right place, but even having that first conversation?
Yeah. I mean, there's doctors and there's doctors, and that's the first thing I'll say. And the second thing I'll say is that, and this is not my idea, this is factual knowledge, because I've heard so many people talk to me about their experiences. First, they went to their doctor, and what I hear is that they got a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a lot of judgment, which is incredible to me in 2024. And then the second thing I hear is that I'm not going to my doctor because I'm not telling him this. I don't want it on my record. I don't want it to affect my insurances or anything like that. I'm not even having the conversation. So I think what doctors could do better, and I know that if somebody came to see you with this problem, is to be kind, right? And practice acceptance and ask them great questions and listen to them and take a holistic approach to their happiness and their health and their well-being, and let them know that they are not alone and that there's a lot of people going through it. It's such a common issue.
You're so spot on. Like when I think about it, when it finally comes out in conversations over time, it is so common. It is unbelievably common.
Yeah, it's like 1 in 5, I think, was the last
Right.
statistics I looked at a couple of years ago, right? So that means if you're sitting at your dinner table and there's like 5 people there,
Yeah.
incredible story. I heard this rehab actually got shut down recently in one of Melbourne's more affluent suburbs because the community didn't want it there,
Wow.
right? A private
So,
rehab. And that is incredible because what I also know is that some of, like 80% of my clientele come from that area. Right.
right.
So there's this denial going on that it's part of their life and part of their family. And I think that perpetuates through doctors and professionals, and everybody needs to drop the stigma, everybody needs to drop the
Mm,
judgment, and everybody needs to realize that, you know, if you give somebody a coping strategy
yeah.
that's cheap and easy to access and work straight away, people are probably going to do it. And it doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It just means that they're under an enormous amount of stress, pressure, or unhappiness.
Amazing, Conrad. Now, before I go on to my last question, what can they expect from your journey? I'm curious.
In terms of,
Addiction Coaching Australia. So if they decide
yeah,
to come and work
uh,
with you.
yeah, I can talk about that for ages. So it's like we've come to a kind of two program approach. Okay. So for me, I have a very, very high-end private coaching program called the Delta Path. And this is equivalent to going to the best rehab without having to physically go. You'll work with me every single day, right? Daily phone check-ins, accountabilities, weekly coaching, twice weekly group coaching, access to holistic health partners, doctors, nutritionists, mindful movement specialists, breathwork practitioners for 8 weeks, right? You also get access to our complete network of, I guess, problem solvers and professionals. Okay. So we've got a great network of fixers and lawyers and consultants, accountants, everybody that you could possibly need to help you to rebuild your life is inside our community. And that's the flagship. Okay. So that's coming on board, working one-on-one with me as a coach, consultant, and a mentor. And people that typically do that program will come in for 8 weeks and then they'll spend 6 to 12 to 18 months with me to really solidify the work. And we've got an incredibly high success rate. It's not accessible to everyone. So just next to that, we have a beautiful program called the Circuit Breaker. And this is for people, busy professionals who just need that reset. Okay. So if we think about Delta Path as drug, alcohol, and gambling issues that are destroying your life, and we think about the Circuit Breaker as things are about to go wrong, and I don't want that to happen. It's more a preventative course. That is a group program. Okay. So there's no one-on-one time, but we have group coaching. We've got access to curriculum, short, sharp, YouTube style punchy videos, daily text accountabilities around planning, learning, gratitude, and self-reporting scores. You can ask questions, you can get feedback. We use modern tools. They're all private, no Facebook, nothing like that.
Mhm.
Like we use School, which is an incredible platform, and Slack, which a lot of people are used to using for work. And then we've actually got in-person events as well. So up in Sydney on March, we're going to do Bondi to Bronte and go for breakfast with all of my Sydney clients. It looks like I'll be in Perth on March the 9th prior to that to see my clients in Perth. And then we do a yearly retreat, 3 or 4 days. And each month in our community, we have experts come in and talk, right? So you're familiar with that. This week, we're having Indigo, who's an incredible mindful movement specialist, coming in and talk about the breath and body connection. So, learning, support, accountability, routine. And what we're big on is like behavior.
Mm.
So if you think about this is really, really important. We can exist or we can change our behavior and we can behave in the solution. What we do is we provide you a place to try and test out that behavior. And if you come and you do the work in the cadence that we set out, and you come to all of the things and you do the curriculum and you do the accountabilities, you are changing your behavior, right? So you just have to interact. You just have to get involved. And at a base level, you'll stop existing and you'll start behaving in the solution. Okay.
That's
So
amazing, Conrad. And what I'm
yeah.
hearing is so much passion, so much care. It's quite phenomenal. And you get it. You've got so much empathy. and you're passionate about getting your clients better, which I'm loving. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely loving, and just really cared for. I think that's so important. And like what you said, the tribe effect is so important because you surround yourself by people who behave a certain way, you'll start behaving like them.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
It's really great. And like the way that I would wrap it up in a nice little 3-piece model, if you like, I can give you 2, right? So we help people open up, we help people show up, and then we help people level up, right, through our programs. And what we want to do is we want to fix the problem, we want to maintain the solution, and then we want to improve on it. And that's where people don't function. Nobody works in that space, right? They're like, here's a thing, do it, and then good luck on the other end.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. And that takes time.
It takes ages.
Yeah. Before we let you go, and I have to say, what an incredible conversation. It's giving so much hope to so many people. Where can people find you?
I'm all over the internet, which is good. And so at Conrad M. Tracy is my Instagram account, and www.addictioncoachingaustralia.com.au. We are just about to launch a new website. So if you go quickly, please don't judge us on the old one. And I'm pretty accessible, right? So if you jump on the Instagram and you've got a question, you can book a call with me and have a chat. There's also a podcast to listen to. There's testimonials that you can read and case studies. You can download all of our program information off the Instagram and off the website. And we're into transparency. So everything's there. All of the investment in time and cost and energy is outlined, and along with our kind of expectations, right? So we put everything in, and we love people that come in and give the program everything. And I'm looking forward to introducing it to more people in 2024.
Amazing. I have to say, Conrad, thank you for doing what you're doing. It's much needed. And yeah, thank you. And thank you for your time today.
It's a pleasure. And, like I said, I was looking forward to it. Ever since I've met you, I've been enamored, and you are one of the best people and one of the best doctors I've ever encountered. So
thank you.
Yeah, I'll be here for you any day of the week, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Amazing. Thank you. Remember that this is general advice only. Please see your healthcare professional for more information. So what's your take-home message today? Remember, it's all about progress and not perfection. And are you suffering from stress? Visit the Usawa Learning Hub on usawa.com.au for more resources on how to de-stress, re-energize, and reclaim your health. Enjoy the journey.